Sunday Inside Texas Live show brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors, joined by Mr. Evan Veet and Paul Wadlington. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
Doing well. What's going on, guys?
Doing good.
Not too much, man. Wish it'd be warmer. That's the only complaint I have in the world right now. But yeah, thanks for joining us here today, guys. Throw a quick like on the video. And also, if you don't mind, go ahead and hop on over to InsideTexas.com and join that community right now. New members join it for just $1. You get to see the fine words of Mr. Evan B., Paul Wadlington, and many more over there at Inside Texas. So come hang out for just a cheap $1 bill. All right, guys, we're here to talk to you today about Will Muschamp. This Texas defense, some of the major changes that are coming. I didn't prepare Evan or Paul because they're just so good at what they do, and they can talk about it on the fly. And that revelation just hit me right now. I kind of decided that really late, let Connor know. But the big major changes, maybe major isn't the right word, and maybe it is. I'm going to let Paul talk about that first. If there is any major changes coming to this defense, I know Texas fans, they see the soft coverages on second down and long, third and long. And that's where, to the common eye, you're going to have a lot of the big major complaints. Anything maybe outside of that, and if you want to go in depth on that, feel free to, though, that we might see out of Muschamp's defense.
Well, yeah, I think we're going to see some significant shifts, not just in terms of scheme, but also how guys are coached, what sorts of things we emphasize. Sark was criticized because people were like, hey, you have a offense ranked in the 30s by advanced statistics. You've got a defense ranked, 14 at the end of the year or something like that. Why are you firing the DC? Now, that was sort of the national commentariat, LOL, look at Sark, right? But what people who on the inside sort of knew, and people, if you're reading Inside Texas, understood, is that Pete Kwiatkowski, you were always going to be a slave to the idea that you had to find someone to coordinate the back end, because he was an incomplete defensive coordinator. Great guy. Like, the players that played for him really love him. He's a good dude. And he coaches the basics of football really well. Like, he taught guys to play their positions, which is important.
Right.
But he couldn't coordinate the back end by himself. And that's been the case for his whole career as a DC. He had Jimmy Lake at Washington. At Texas, we had to bring in, as you guys remember, Gary Patterson. He had to teach him quarters, right? Gary Patterson departs, and we see a little bit of a drop-off. And he did get sort of Dwayne Aquina foisted on him. That's not who he wanted necessarily. But also, he didn't have a Rolodex of guys to provide a ready-made solution of, hey, I want to bring in this guy, and he's going to coordinate the back end. He's just sort of like, bring in whoever, I'll work with him. And it didn't work, right? And there was a period of time where our pass defense was uncoordinated, right? And if you're the defensive coordinator, you're going to pull the responsibility for things that are not coordinated. So ultimately, you can't do this, let's try to untie the Gordian knot. No, maybe we can get another good hire. You're going to be contingent on getting a good secondary hire every year to make the defense work. Or you can address the problem and say, we need a complete and full defensive coordinator. Look, the fact is, Steve Sarkisian needs a head coach of the defense. That's what he wants. He doesn't want a guy that he has to feel like during the game, he's got to be on the guys saying, hey, on a 3rd and 3, should we be off 12 yards? Like, why are we doing this? Like, come on, man. And I think that's something that he grew frustrated with. I think he feels like he actually will get more time to be a head coach and spend more time on the offense. Mm-hmm. His baby, if he just brings in a guy who's basically a head coach of the D, enter Will Muschamp. So that's kind of the big background of people, not understanding why we did it. And then schematically, he's going to bring in more of a Georgia approach of defense. And we're going to try to stop the run with the least amount of guys. We're going to throttle explosives over the top. That's going to be the number one priority. So not that much different than PK in that regard. But on situational downs and distance, we're not going to be 9 yards off of a receiver on 3rd and 4 to the wide side of the field, right? We're not going to be 11 yards off a slot receiver on 3rd and 6, where a guy can run out and literally turn around and and fall forward, right? So that's going to change. I think our front's going to change. We're going to have sort of the way to think of it is maybe 3 bigs, 2 really big guys, like 1 really big guy, another big guy, and then a big defensive end. And then we're going to have our pass rusher, Colin Simmons. But our pass rushers, as with Pete Kwiatkowski, they're not just going to be free to sprint up the field every play and hunt negative plays. They're actually going to have responsibilities. And, what are the knocks on Georgia? is that they don't just let their edges sprint up the field and hunt sacks. So I think we'll actually have a modified approach where we'll have a little bit more of what we might modify to our personnel, because we do really have a gifted edge room. But I think we're going to bring over some of that Georgia mentality. And you see that with some of our portal takes. So that's my long soliloquy of 5 minutes. Everyone's asleep. Evan, what do you think, man?
I do think when you're looking at the parts of the teams that really failed this past year, part of it I think had to do with Sark maybe biting off a little more than he could chew with the roster, and that led to the offensive line being a disaster, him not properly addressing stuff in the offseason. But yeah, this Texas team wasn't good enough to beat Ohio State and Georgia, but the Florida loss, for me, that was a big PK disaster game. I mean, that they got moved around on the line of scrimmage. He had these better zone coverage cornerbacks going against Dallas Wilson and Vernell Brown one-on-one on the outside, when that's the only way they're going to win. It's the only way you're going to be able to pass. Trying to spy DJ Lagway with Colin Simmons when Lagway was gimpy. And then Texas probably should have dropped another game this season in that Kentucky through Vanderbilt stretch, and probably not the Vanderbilt game, but they give up a lot of points late to Vanderbilt. They give up a lot of points in general to Mississippi State. So I do think if Texas is an 8-4 team this past year, you're seeing a lot more hate going towards Pete Kwiatkowski in the offseason. And that's not to say PK was a bad coach here, but I think Sark knew that if the big complaint for people is, hey, you need to bring in an offensive coordinator, Sark, you've got too much on your hands as a head coach here. I think his solution to that is I can be more of an offensive coordinator if I bring in my defensive head coach and let Muschamp do what he needs to do. I don't have to worry as much about that. And I think he kind of reflected that when he was talking to us about the shortened roster over the Citrus Bowl. They only had about 60 guys. And he kept saying, like, I like that I can see everyone on the field right now. I feel like for some of this year, he was saying he didn't get a chance to see a lot of these guys. And that's kind of a problem when you feel like you have to head coach the entire team. And of course he's a head coach, but when you have to know all these defensive players and what is going to be best for the defense and help PK with the back end stuff and coverages, and then you have to go call your correct game with a flawed offense. So I don't think PK was actually a scapegoat the way people said it was. I do think Muschamp's just a better fit for what Sark wants to do. And things went more positively for PK this year than maybe he probably should have gotten credit for when it came to winning the Florida or the Mississippi State game and the Florida game mostly going on. Oh, Arch Manning wasn't ready. The offense wasn't good enough. I mean, that was a defensive loss for Texas. So I'm just very excited for the Muschamp move. And I'm glad that they're going to have more, I think, aggressiveness from the cornerbacks. And yeah, you mentioned that part about the Georgia edge rushers not being quite unleashed, but I think it's a little different when you have Colin Simmons here, and he's still going to drop into coverage, but he's going to change what Muschamp wants to do because he just knows what kind of talent he's going to have there, and that's going to change the philosophy a tiny bit, in my opinion.
You know, I'm curious what you guys think, Cord and Evan. To what extent was just this influenced by Sark going, hey, I know for a fact Muschamp was their special projects guy? Mm-hmm. Like, all teams advance scout, but typically you'll assign a GA or you'll assign like one of your analysts to go advance scout your team, a team 3 weeks out. I'm pretty confident Muschamp was advanced scouting us from August. And I think he handed Kirby a game plan 2 weeks out from our game and said, we're doing this. And I'm wondering to what extent we played this Georgia team more or less 12 quarters of football, 3 games. And we've had successful offense in about 2 of those quarters. To what extent was Sark just like, this guy's kicking my ass, I should probably just hire him?
I mean, for what I know from Georgia folks is that Will Muschamp was heavily involved, yes, in all three game plans for Texas. And so, yeah, I mean, you have to ask that question. You know, at some point it's like, not necessarily you can't beat them, join them, but like if you can't beat them, bring them on over here. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a fair question. And again, it brings more than just that one benefit. You know what I mean? Like you talked about, you're going to have a little bit, probably a little bit more aggressive defense. I think you're going to have a secondary that you're not having to bring in an elite mind like a Jimmy Lake or a Gary Patterson, who the further you get away from those guys, it shows, you know, that you have to have that elite guy in your back pocket to have the type of defense that maybe meets your standard or that people expect of you. And so that's more than a fair question. And again, yeah, I think it brings more than just one benefit there. You know, hey, maybe Sark gets playing chess indeed there, but definitely not a scapegoat in my opinion. Like you said, Evan, you could have easily dropped Kentucky. You could have easily dropped Mississippi State. I like Cutter Boley, but I think we made Cutter Boley look a lot better than Cutter Boley may be or may have been at that time at Kentucky, especially with the players around him. And so, yeah, I think it's overall, the big thing to me is I think we'll see a secondary that is going to look a lot different than it's looked in the last few years outside of the outlier year in 2024 when you have some pretty dang elite talent back there. You got to call it how it is. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty dang excited about it. It's not a knock on PK. I'm grateful for the way, like you said, he taught guys his position. You saw our edge rushing improve at Texas, just overall play at the edge position improve over at Texas. And so, yeah, I'm not knocking the guy, but at the end of the day, man, is there anything that concerns you about Will Muschamp coming over? And then in a minute, Paul, don't let me forget, but I want to talk Mint a little bit with you. Is Texas going to, are they going to run a little bit? You said everything's going to be modified just a hair. Dan Lanning leaves Kirby Smart in that tree, and his Oregon defense runs a lot more Mint than what Georgia does. And so is that something that you see maybe Muschamp and Texas doing as well? But first, talk any concerns if you have them from both of you guys.
Go get him, Evan.
Oh, sorry. You go first, Paul.
No, I said go get him, man.
Well, I think the first thing is the track record recently. I mean, he wasn't. What is it? I'm trying to make the actual 2015 was the last time he was a true defensive coordinator, play calling for an SEC team, and he was there at South Carolina. Obviously, had his hands on everything on that defense. But from what I remember, there were different play callers for that team, and then he goes over to Georgia, and he's very background kind of guy. Obviously, he's making a big impact on practices. He's helping call games, but he's under the best defensive mind you can possibly have there. So first of all, like how similar is Will Muschamp from 2010 to what we're getting in 2015? It's been 15 years since you've seen this guy be an elite coach at Texas. And I know people are a little fatigued of the nostalgia hire. I mean, that's the obvious first thing you go to if you want to talk negatives is, well, Dwayne Akina came in as a nostalgia hire. His track record wasn't actually that good coming into Texas and showed poorly. Muschamp's track record is better. Like you made the point, Paul. I mean, this was a guy who was a game plan genius. He knows what to attack on teams, and he clearly saw both the last 2 years. Texas doesn't have the interior or the run game to run up the middle. We can keep our 5 defensive backs out there. They also don't have the outside winners outside of some good Matthew Golden plays, and then that one DeAndre Moore catch really where he darts up the field, and that was from the slot anyway, that can actually win. So we're just going to play up on you and force you to run on us, and you're not going to be able to run on us. So I think my concern is just when was the last time he's been the guy holding a play call sheet, actually getting play calls into a team. And it's a very different game that we're playing compared to 2015 at Auburn when he was only there for a year, or 2010 at Texas. And he's not a head coach anymore. He's also not an analyst. He's somewhere in the middle as a defensive coordinator. But I think schematically it makes sense. I think that players we have on the field also make sense for what he wants to do. The only 2 spots I'm a little bit concerned about when it comes to fit is middle linebacker Mike and then nickel. We'll see what they do with Littleton, or if that's Mack or Black, or what exactly they're doing with that. But I do think it's a pretty good marriage between what Sark needed, what the team needed to maybe get over the hump, and also who the players are on the field. But let's see what he looks like with the play sheet. He's got week 2 Ohio State. That's Julian Sayin, Jeremiah Smith, Bo Jackson, a semi-rebuild offensive line, two really good blocking tight ends. Like, that's where he's got to prove it really right there. That's his biggest game as a play caller in 10 years. And that's a lot. That's coming up quick. That's week 2.
Are you worried about his currency? I mean, so I guess my concern is when a coach has been out of the game for a while, stuff changes fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Especially
now. Like, I think if you took a little break from football between 1977 and 1981, I'm not sure a lot changed. Like, you're still running sprint out passes and running fullback dives and stuff, right? So, but there's been huge changes in football that happen sort of almost every year, and you don't even notice them just because it's just so normal now. But he hasn't been out of the game. I'm not worried about him being like, "Ooh, what's this 5-wide business? I don't know what they're doing. Is that legal?" Like, I don't think that's going to be a concern, right? He's been in the game. He's just not calling the play sheet. So maybe there's a little adjustment period there, right? Like when it's, it would be interesting to see, like, do we get our calls in quickly, early in the year, stuff like that. Just like shaking off some cobwebs. But I'm not concerned about currency. I mean, are either of you guys?
Now when you talk about him being a special projects guy at Georgia, and like you said, a lot has changed in the last 5 years. You talk about Sark and his orbit motion, the RPO game, and like a lot of teams really had to adjust to that. It's not just Sark, of course. But yeah, like you said, it's not the big change from 77 to 81. Like, so much has happened in college football. Defensive coaches have some of them are really, really good at job of adjusting, and some haven't. And so that's going to be the first question mark for me, just like you said. But then you go look at same thing you said earlier. Special projects guy at Georgia seems to have done a good job in game planning for Texas, and we have a pretty modernized pro-style offense. So not too worried.
Well, and also, if you want to talk about what offense in the SEC was running, the hyper modern college game of let's RPO as much as possible, let's get a quarterback to help the run game and throw a lot of screen passes. I mean, that's the team he was facing against off in practice. And Zachariah Branch, I think 60% of his production came on screens. Gunnar Stockton was either tucking it, handing it off, or throwing a fade. Like it wasn't that it was simple. It's just that it was modern, and so it does help. So much of it helps that he was at Georgia these past 4 years instead of, like you said, sitting on his laurels or working somewhere really low level or even in the NFL. That's where I think your currency part is fair, Paul. Like I don't think he knows what the game is right now, and that's nice to know.
Another concern when you get a coach who's had a lot of runs around the block is they get a little jaded, and they've made a little money, and they're looking for their last big score to buy the lake house before they retire, or whatever. I don't really worry about that with Will Muschamp. Like, I think he's got an inner drive I think when he's 75 years old, he'll be diagramming stuff on a whiteboard and pounding it. And,
so when you got two different nicknames, Coach Boom and Coach Blood, that gives me a little bit of solace. And trusting that he'll be okay. I don't think that's the case. Real quick, guys, let's hear a word from the sponsor, Academy Sports and Outdoors, and we'll get to the back half of the show.
Fast one.
Same day delivery powered by DoorDash.
All right, I want you to.
That was fast. What the hell?
Man,
super fast, baby.
He was drinking his tall boy. We caught him.
Hey.
I'm a shiner over here.
Trying to get you guys in and out on this fine Sunday. Question from Tim Pardue. If we take Sark at his word on a commitment to complementary football, what does the Muschamp scheme and philosophy reveal about Sark's expectation of the offense? Either of you or both of you. Go right ahead.
Well, this is galaxy brain question here. Ultimately, you want your defense to get stops. You want to get on the field if you've got a good offense. So, we don't want 14 play drives. Right there, I wrote about this kind of critically. In some ways, PK did a great job in the Alamo Bowl back in 2023 against Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
where they had a dynamic offense, and PK did a good job of eliminating their explosives. But as the game wore on, he didn't understand that getting the ball was more important than preventing explosives, and he was allowing 14 play 7-minute drives. Right, and we're down 2 scores. Like, at that point, the ball's primary. Like, go get the ball. And if they score on you, that's fine. You were going to lose anyway, right? And PK never had those realizations. And ultimately, that's on Sark, right? Sark has to get on the headset and be like, hey, the ball is the thing right now. It's not about preventing explosives right now if they're running 11-play drives, right? But ultimately, the reason you bring on Muschamp for that complementary aspect is Muschamp's in charge of all that now. He understands that. He understands those game situations, the game theory. I think our offense is going to have a lot more explosiveness this year, and I think they're going to have a much higher floor, and that we're going to not get these constant negative plays. Mm-hmm. Some of that's schematic. Some of the things that we dial up are to catch you for the opportunity of a big play, but there's a larger opportunity for a negative play. Like, we'll run a counter. We're running counter tray. Counter gaps, whatever generation you are, you call it GT counter, something different.
Right.
It's all the same play. We run that fake play action, and we're asking a tight end to pick up an edge as we set up the play action shot. Sometimes that tight end gets his ass kicked, and the edge sacks your quarterback. Sometimes your receiver breaks wide open, and it's an easy touchdown. The problem is last year, we would sometimes dial it up correctly, and we couldn't get the ball there, or the receiver couldn't break coverage, or whatever. So I think we're going to have a much higher floor on offense, which will enable you to hit that ceiling. If you could stay out on the field with an explosive offense enough, if you could not go 3 and out, you're going to hit a big play eventually. That's just going to happen.
Right.
So
I think when Sark audited his own team the past 2 years, like how his offense operated, he wasn't explosive. Like, Ewers couldn't hit a deep ball, and Isaiah Bond wasn't a factor. Neither of your running backs the last 2 years have been able to be explosive players outside of a Jaden Blue play once a game. Ewers wasn't a come-from-behind quarterback. You didn't have the outside deep threats this past year. Your tight ends couldn't block very well. And that led to a team that, you felt good when you get to 24. That's what you could score a lot. But how many come-from-behind wins did Texas have? Like Mississippi State, and that was a lot of Arch Hero ball. And That's the only one that comes to mind at least of big games that Texas really came from behind and took from other teams. So
A&M, baby.
That is it. That's a good point. That's a good point. So you give A&M, but that's a lot of Arch Manning stuff, right? So I think when he looks at his team, the way his offense has operated the last 2 years, you're saying, well, I'm not generating the explosives that I should be, and maybe that's a personnel problem. Maybe that is my own coaching problem. But if I'm throwing a defense out there that can't go take the ball back for me and is letting the other team kind of dictate who has the ball and when these explosives happen, it doesn't mesh well together. And so I think Sark, both like you said, the floor is going to be better because Masunis and Townsend is probably the best blocking tight end duo you're going to have here since Sark's gotten here, and you have a Cam Coleman and Malik Brown and Hollywood Smothers. But they're just going to be able to operate more efficiently on offense, and still, when they have the ball, every play you're threatening to go deep. And that's why it's nice to have the ball. And yeah, like you said, Paul, sometimes with these good offenses, they'll be like, all right, sure, we'll keep the ball in our possession the whole game. Like, that's fine with me. We know we can get 3rd down and 7 if you're going to play 10 yards off. So I just think Sark knew what he was doing poorly. Also, red zone you can throw in there, and just realize that PK is not the coach to have on the other end if he's going to operate that way and continue to operate that way.
You got to respect Sark. It's not like he's just, he's auditing the whole program. Taking a look at both sides of the ball and really seeing where he's come up short. Because, man, there's been loads of talent, loads of draft picks come through Texas the last few years, and you just can't beat Georgia, can't beat Ohio State. Got to get over that hump, got to take the next step. Let me ask you this real quick. Is there any specific players on the defensive side of the ball that comes to mind that are immediately directly going to benefit from Will Muschamp coming back to town?
I've got a couple. One's a transfer. We want to man up outside if we can. Mm-hmm. Now we're not going to tell that guy, you're taking the whole field in man coverage. We're going to say, hey, you've got deep and you've got to the hash, right?
Right.
You can't let anyone pass you, and we'd like you to get your hands on someone. So we're not going to do this squat coverage where we squat in front of the guy and then allow him a release. I've never understood that. If you want to play off. Right? If you want to squat and then right at the snap, take off running backwards, like your drop coverage, that's cool too. What I've never understood was the squat coverage when you're not in a zone and you don't actually put your hands on the guy and he just runs past you. So yeah. I think those days are over. I think Bo Masco from Rutgers was brought in for a very specific reason. He's a very long guy. He is a man coverage specialist. He's not very physical, like stopping the run or anything. But he's a guy that you can put out there, and against certain body types, he can shut down an SEC receiver outside the hashes. And that's hugely valuable to your defense. So I think that's going to be, I would say, pay attention to the guys who can man up outside, because that's really what Muschamp wants to do. Now, if that guy is more of just kind of a situational guy, or we're going to throw him in for looks in certain parts of the game, or maybe their matchups, body styles and types can determine a matchup of a wide receiver. Some wide receivers just can't handle hands on them. And they're otherwise great. They're otherwise really good receivers. And then there's other receivers that are like, please come put your hands on me because I'm slow, but I'm 6'2", 215, and I'm going to manhandle you. It's like Indiana's receivers, right?
Yeah.
So I think we're going to play some matchups there. I think that's something you should watch. The easy answer, I guess, is Colin Simmons is good or something, but I don't know. What do you have, Evan?
Well, I forgot who said it on our board. It was one of our staff writers that made the joke, whoever's playing boundary cornerback on this team, their life's going to be pretty easy. It's just either if you're not the guy who's the main presser, which I think, like you said, Masco fits that well, and maybe that's where Grayson Littleton can play off and play outside and be allowed to cut up field more. And that's where he's really I actually do want to see him get more outside reps this next year and see what you have of the Black Matt combo in the inside, because I think Kobe Black's a bit better as a slot in this specific defense. But I'll go quickly: one returner, one transfer, one freshman. Returner, if I can't say Cade Phillips because it's kind of on the Bo Masco line. Phillips needed to be pressing up on guys more. I really like what it means for Xavier Phillips to me, because this was a great recruit who didn't play much his freshman year, and then you heard great things from Sark in the offseason, and you kind of got the Jelani McDonald vibes of just a great athlete who's going to really break out second year, and then he got a chance, and the defense just didn't fit what he wanted to do. But with how Muschamp kind of blurs the lines between what the two safeties do, sometimes you're playing over top with Jelani McDonald, sometimes he's close to the box. I think that fits Phil to me because he's an athlete and he's a guy that can either backtrack and help over top, or he can come down and hit a guy. he didn't get a lot of opportunities to go and tackle players this past year, which I think was not good for his game and didn't help him get into a rhythm. A transfer, I think Ian Gaffard fits so perfectly into that mid front that I know we should probably talk about at some point. Just because like he's just a bigger version of Bill Norton or Jermaine Lole, a little bit more talented, can really two gap. And Texas hasn't had two gappers much these past 2 years, and they haven't even given them a chance to do that. So I think it's just such an easy fit in there when you have all these other good defensive tackles around him. And then, man, Tyler Atkinson is going to feast in this defense. I think maybe year 2 is more likely where it is, but especially with Biles coming in. But this is just the epitome of go run and get the ball and go play as a will. And if you need to cover a little bit, that's fine. But you are in there because you can out-athlete a lot of these tight ends in the SEC. You're as fast as the running backs, and you're just a naturally talented player. Like, I can't wait to what he looks like next year. And I think he's one of those guys that's going to play year 1, but like star by year 2, kind of similar to how I feel about Lance Jackson coming into this next season.
That's well said by both of you. I've got very mirrored thoughts on Bo Mascow with you, Paul. Definitely think he's brought in for a specific reason. He fits this type of defense. Fits what they're trying to do. I'm very curious, though, to see how they play, the slot situation and who gets the benefit of the reps there. But at the same time, could be matchup based, all scheme based, game plan dependent. So excited to see that. It's nice to have a defensive coordinator who, in my opinion, is going to have this back end tightened up a lot quicker than what you saw, obviously, in the last regime. Now, Xavier Filson, you brought him up, Evan. That's a guy I'm very curious about because I think he's got elite athletic traits. But he looked like a bit of a mess last year at times, just out of place, not very confident, playing a little bit slower than he's capable of. But at the same time, you take a look at that secondary, and you can say that about almost every single player out there, maybe save Manny Muhammad. And so, again, thinking, this is why we're talking about him. He will be a big benefactor from Muschamp coming over. I guess we can laugh at this one, Rob. Do you think you guys think having Coach Boone back will help develop the O-line to at least not be an embarrassment to the team? Can a defensive coordinator improve the culture and tenacity of an offensive line? Is that capable or possible?
Well, not directly. I don't think so. I mean, you could just hurt their confidence more by humiliating them in practice. But you know what he might do? And I think there might be some early suggestions that this is happening. He might say, hey, your guys aren't real strong.
Yeah.
And that could change some things in the strength and conditioning program that could lead to benefits for the offensive line. Because we just don't have guys that get people knocked off the ball. And some of that's priority. We prioritize pass protection. By the way, that's what the NFL prioritizes. They don't talk about the amazing run blocking when they're showing first-round draft picks of an offensive tackle. They're showing him shutting down an elite college pass rusher, right? When Gooseby goes pro next year, it's going to be him shutting down Cassius Howell. It's not going to be him doing a great down block on pin and pull. So I think we do need to get stronger there, and I think that's where Muschamp will have some opinions. I think that could be helpful because I think he's a guy that Sark respects. Also, if you looked at the Georgia offensive line, they looked a little different than us physically. And I'll just leave it at that. Even they're young guys. So
they were young.
But they had a different body type and they move differently. Trevor Gooseby accepted, right? So I think that's something too that can influence, but directly, no. I mean, he coaches his side of the ball and he's not over there trying to tell Kyle Flood what to do.
Any opinion on that, Evan? Is he gonna get over there and whip that O-line into shape?
I think more what Paul said, the trickle down of the strength and conditioning for the whole team helps when you have a more in your face defensive coordinator saying, listen, Steve, your O-line's weak. Like they're just not, especially like those second unit guys. I think maybe it's, especially if they can figure out the Seymour eligibility, it's probably going to be fine. And Siani's a big dude. Gooseby's obviously very good. We'll see about Robertson. But like those second unit guys, that's where maybe you're going to see them be developed and helped more because they have a guy like Muschamp who will tell Torrey Beckton or Steve Sarkisian, hey, these guys are not up to speed of what a championship or at least SEC level offensive line should look like.
I agree. I mean, I don't think, again, like Paul said directly, but yeah, there can be some open and honest conversations, being had about it. One last quick question from Mr. Kevin Hua here. How difficult will it be to install the Muschamp defense and for the players to learn the system, especially for our goals to play championship defense in the upcoming season?
I think the only parts I mentioned earlier, The only positions I'm a little concerned about, like I don't think that the setting up the mint front is going to be that hard because you look at what they did against Ohio State last year. It wasn't quite mint, but they had the three bigs in there, and they didn't have a nose tackle as much. But the Hero Kanu was basically playing edge against Ohio State, so they've played somewhat like that before. But yeah, it's seeing how the cornerbacks react to a new system where they are being told, hey, you got to go get in the face of a player, and can you do that by week 2 against Ohio State? Can Grayson Littleton play on the outside? Because I think he profiles, if you just brought him in this year as a true freshman, didn't know that he was a great nickel last year, I think he profiles as an outside cornerback in the Muschamp defense. And then, yeah, how's the run defense going to look in the second level? Because Biles and Smith are a little bit smaller than you maybe want both of your linebackers to be. So can either of them be a true Mike in this defense? I think Smith is going to be the one they end up kind of moving over and saying, hey, can you put on a little bit more muscle? Can you stand up a running back if it's one-on-one in the gap? Because he had tackling problems. He missed some tackles last year. So I think it's more just positional problems where I don't know if they have a true middle linebacker, and Cryer is that, but he's more of a depth guy. And what does a cornerback situation look like week 2 when you're getting thrown into the fire against Jeremiah Smith? And I know that the receivers around him aren't quite the same as they've been the last 2 years heading into 2026, but that's still a tough offense to have to play press man coverage against.
What about you, Paul? How quickly can Texas learn this defense to play to championship standard? Because, we all know that it's not like the schedule's easy, baby. The tests come quick and they come early.
Yeah, the schedule's gonna be hard. I mean, we have to have that in mind. Of we're just trying to make the playoff, and if we're a good team and it's coming together at the right time, then we'll make our run. And it doesn't matter if we eat a loss or two. What we can't do is go 9-3, because the committee, for all their talk of schedule strength and all that, at the end of the day, they do an Excel spreadsheet and they sort on losses. And if you have 5 top 25 wins, but you have 3 losses, and someone has 0 top 25 wins and 1 loss, then they're the better team in their mind, right? That's just how it works. So we've got to start off pretty fast, especially with Ohio State. I think you can install a defense pretty quickly. And I think he can do it at a high level proficiency. I really wish we could see a spring game. I'm bummed out that we can't take a look at what we're actually doing and what his modifications are. Are we going to go full Georgia, or is it going to be a combo defense? In the mint front, we should probably explain very quickly. It's a 0 technique nose. You're lined up directly over the center, and then 2 4-eyes. 4-eye means you're lined up on the tackle, but you're not lined up head up. You're lined up to his outside shoulder. So you're not all the way in the gap like a 5 technique, but you are getting that advantage. And one of the reason this has sort of become de rigueur is increasingly there's an O-line crisis in college football. We're not the only O-line that can't get push at the point of attack.
Right.
And so if that's true, there's benefits to running 3-man fronts and then bringing your pass rush from edge guys and linebackers that you're not sure if those guys are coming. And then also, when you get really athletic guys lined up in a 4-eye on a tackle, that's a type of pass rush that your tackle isn't used to dealing with. And he can basically take gaps on that guy and get upfield and get interior pressure. And interior pressure is best pressure. So, and in that front, you're asking the nose, just stand there on a passing down. He's if he can run through the center, great. But most of the time, he's not going to be able to. And by the 8th play of the drive, he's going to be tired anyway. So that's kind of what the mint front is. And the question is that our base, or is that a look?
Right.
And I don't know. We're going to find out. And we won't freaking know till the freaking opener, because we don't have a stupid spring game. So all the more reason to subscribe to Inside Texas and get the inside info.
There you go, man. Long live the spring game. But yeah, hop on over to Inside Texas. Schedule's going to be tough, Paul. 10-2, that would be I won't necessarily say a feat, but I mean that's got to be the base to get you into the college football playoffs for all the reasons you just said about the playoff committee, and we all have strong thoughts there. Aaron, appreciate the compliment, man. And that's a hell of a feat itself, having a signed jersey.
Holy cow!
That's pretty impressive there, man. You got the plug.
100,000 signed jerseys.
And this is a really good point, Mr. Blake Bryant. Muschamp did a great job in 2008 teaching the new system. Earl and Blake were both freshmen.
Yeah, true freshman and a redshirt freshman at safety. That's got to be terrifying, man.
Yeah,
and that defense was very good.
Very, very
and
good.
one thing I will say is how many guys on this current defense that you see starting predate Akina, let's just say we're on the team in 2024. A lot of these guys that are actually going to be asked to make a lot of impact are either transfers, Gaffard, Masco, Biles, or just Jackson in a second year, Terry in a second year, Littleton, Phillips. Phil Simi was there before, but Jonah Williams too. So a lot of the guys, like, they've only had one other system. They can just kind of like that go and figure it out. I think the only ones who would maybe have a problem are these fourth-year guys who really have been entrenched and played a lot of snaps in that Pete Kwiatkowski type of style. Maybe McDonald, and I don't think Simmons is going to have any problems with anything either. He's just going to be a star.
You imagine his bag just gets deeper. Sorry, Paul, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I was thinking, you brought up the linebackers and not having like a true Mike, right? It's all the more kind of reason for a mint front, right? If you keep those two small, super active guys clean, I mean, Biles is a phenomenal blitzer.
Right.
And if you know anything about Narduzzi and Pittsburgh, that defense is designed to create statistics for the linebackers. And he wants undersized linebackers that just sprint through gaps and create negative plays. And then we've got Ty Anthony Smith, who we know is good in coverage, but that's his skill set too. That guy's sudden. And it makes me wonder, maybe you just take these guys, keep them clean with that front, and then you just bring them. You alternate bringing them. One's dropping, you're not sure which. Colin Simmons is on the edge. And then, occasionally you'll drop even one of your down linemen if it's Lance Jackson. Like, he's not useless if you drop him into a hook curl, right? I mean, you could do a lot of interesting stuff with our personnel. What I would not want to do is just play like base defense and say, Ty Anthony Smith, take on that pulling guard, jack him up, and then tackle the running back. I don't think that's a thing for this defense to excel.
I don't know. Sometimes just playing cover 2 can pick you up a win in the old red or the Lone Star Showdown. It's pretty crazy how simplistic we work at A&M and how well it worked.
When everybody knows what they're doing, it's amazing how everything cleans up.
Yeah, pretty crazy. But yeah, I think we've seen enough just base defense. I'll say that. But hey, comment section, I want to say thanks for all the questions, for all the input. Y'all were awesome today. Haven't done so, man. Go ahead and like the video. Go share it with a friend. And yeah, man. Evan, Paul. I'm tired today, man. I tied all the letters in your name together right there, Evan. Trying to say your name. Evan, Paul. Anything else you want to add to it before we get out of here, brothers?
No, this went by fast. This was fun just to sit and talk ball. The chat was great. I don't know. What would be your biggest concern about the D coming into the year?
I'm personally just a little concerned about depth at a linebacker a little bit, more so at safety. I was more in the camp of adding one more guy just because I'm really hoping that, that Derek Williams is, as athletic as he was 2 years ago before the injury, or a year and a half ago before the injury. I'm hoping that Xavier Filsaime, is a little more, just put together. But again, that good coaching there goes a long, long ways. So again, I'm a big fan of the Bo Masco pull from Rutgers. I like his tape. I think he's very physical. He's got good hands. So yeah, I'll go with depth at safety, depth at linebacker, which I think is, we're in a pretty good spot if that's my biggest concern.
Yeah, I will say that a lot of us have been hyping up the secondary, but it is a lot of theoretical of what they can be. We know what Jelani McDonald is, but Cade Phillips really only started 3 games for Texas. Grayson Littleton, we'll see what spot he plays in. Masco's a transfer. Filsaime, Derek Williams weren't great last year. So it's expecting an expected jump. It's a reasonable expectation, but is that going to come to fruition? Is that going to be ready for week 2? That would probably be the only thing for like really that first game. But I think by Red River and Tennessee, that this defense will really be humming.
I will say the only thing that kind of, qualms some of my concerns about will the defense be ready early is that I think Ohio State, they're replacing a ton. I think Carnell Tate was obviously an elite part of that offense over the last couple of seasons, defensively replacing a ton, coaching overturn. And so, as we have the same issues, I think we're just a little bit better set up on initial outlook, to win that game early on. Obviously, having it at home, it's going to be summertime heat. All those things help as well. But no, I definitely get that concern for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you, Cord. Depth at linebacker, depth at safety. I think we're not going to be the only team in college football with depth concerns. I just think that the days of the badass 3 deep. I mean, we've even had that at Texas with the running backs, right? There, we had that. There's the famous picture of Jaden Blue, Bijan Robinson, Roshan Johnson. God, why am I blanking on Jonathan Brooks? I just don't think that's going to happen anymore.
Right.
I don't think you're just going to stack up dudes anymore. Now, you could sell guys on that at certain positions a little better, but I don't think safety is one of them. I don't think linebacker is one of them. So you've got to just kind of, I mean, Indiana, amazing, like one of the most amazing storybook things that's ever happened in not just college football, but sports.
Right.
They also practiced in a way to allow them to be healthy. Because if they were 1 or 2 injuries away, and I don't mean to their quarterback, I just mean guys. If they were 1 or 2 injuries away from starters of not winning the national title because they just didn't have depth. But they also managed their program accordingly. Not a lot of hitting in practice. You know, basically we get our work done and we go home, and we're not going to like send a message to our team and do Oklahoma drills for 3 hours one day and lose a starter. So I just think that's the new world of college football, and there's going to be a strong element of injury luck every time someone tries to win the title now.
Yeah, no, that's well said. I mean, everybody in the transfer portal era, you know, nobody has the depth that, you know, maybe, or I'll say this, none of the top end SEC schools have the depth that they would have had, you know, a handful of years ago. There's no more five stars sitting on, you know, third on the depth chart at you know, at Alabama or Georgia as you would have had in some years past. And so that, you know, that makes a big difference. Obviously, it's going to create more parity as well as those players get spread across other depth charts across the country. And all of a sudden you got Indiana winning a national championship with very little 5 stars. You know, they're like, hey, we don't even need that. So like you said, cool storybooks, cool finish, man. But man, you know, it's time for Texas to get back up there and compete, fight for it. Everyone's got issues. Hopefully Texas is a little bit, you know, better built to handle theirs going into what's continuing to be crazy era of college football, man. But yeah, no, I mean, anything else, guys? Y'all, here you go. One more. Any freshmen stepping up on the defense? Anybody that you could see?
Atkinson.
Yeah,
there you go. Point and
I do also think that in the week 1 and 3 games, you're going to see Richard Wesley at freshly 17 years old, just kind of out athlete some poor tackle, and you're going like, this dude's going to be a star. I mean, he was our highest ranked recruit a class before he really should be coming to school, and that's just one of those dudes you don't find very often. You're never going to find in the transfer portal, so I'm excited for him and Atkinson for sure.
Atkinson is your mid-front linebacker, replacing, you know, Spelling a guy. He's just there to be super athletic, and you just say, hey, man, sprint through that gap real fast and go wreck somebody. What we don't want him doing is reading and reacting and, like, thinking too much. If you guys ever remember young Derek Johnson at Texas?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he had no idea what he was doing, but he impacted games, and there was a car crash, you know, several times a quarter when he was in there.
Whatever he did, he was doing it at, you know, 100 miles an hour. Bodies were flying, and to have some impact plays. But yeah, it was fun to watch that development. Obviously, it was fun to see him working with some of these guys. I don't know if y'all saw some of the social media posts. I think
Atkinson's got a good YouTube channel.
So yeah, but yeah, DJ working with some of the new guys on campus. But man, chat, y'all killed it. Some really good questions, some really good comments. DKW, I see all these comments, man. Thank you for always being here and being supportive. Rob, you as well, my guy. But yeah, man. Thank y'all for watching Inside Texas. Don't forget, $1 will get you a subscription for you new members. Go take advantage of that. But Paul, Evan, it was a blast. Got it right that time. Thank you for watching Inside Texas, guys. Until next time.